You help run a couple of independent game stores, 2 Luna video game locations, one in Chula Vista and one in La Mesa, don't you?
Yes, I do.
You've spoken about what it takes to run an independent game store quite often on the show since you have some experience with it.
So, Polygon published an article, and I'm gonna hit on some points here. You really should read this article if you really want to know. This is a great article. It was written by hold on. It was written by Matt Leone. It was published on July 17th, so just yesterday. And it's a long article. It's worth reading all the way through. I can't get into all of it because it would take forever. But what I love about this article is it validates and verifies every single thing I've ever talked about running an independent game store on this podcast. Like literally down to numbers I've quoted.
Okay.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty. What it talks about is a lot of this talks about the financial, what goes into financially running one of these things, the problems that people face in modern times with running these, and so on and so forth. The interesting thing about this article that does stray a bit from what I talk about in this article, I talk about on this podcast, is this does seem to be a bit more focused on a store that focuses more on newer games. Okay. So this article seems to me to focus more on new game sales for newer systems and used games.
For newer systems. Not necessarily retro games.
Right. But it does cover some. So, one of the biggest problems with running a modern game store is the delicate balance of bringing in brand new games and the wholesale costs that a game store pays versus the profit that you make on it, and how fast these games drop in price. The fact that wholesalers don't really give a fuck about independent game stores, and that things like Amazon are almost the better way to buy, some of these new games.
Sure.
Now, someone in this article, and this is such a huge article that if I can't quote everyone properly, I'm going to feel horrible, but someone said that in this article that when you run an independent game store, you're not really running a game store. You're running a store. Wholesalers don't view you as a game store. They don't give you the discounts that they give other stores, that they give the big chains,
the big box change,
right?
Like Target or Walmart.
Target, Walmart, Best Buy, GameStop. There's a quote that back in the 80s and 90s, you used to be able to buy a game wholesale, like an NES game, say for $25, or a PlayStation game for $30. Okay, and these games were sold for $49.99 or something like that.
So you make 100% profit.
So you would make
roughly
a great amount of profit.
Which is, for a wholesale, that's a good amount.
Yeah.
100%, that's respectable.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Nowadays, and I think it's funny because I've stated these prices. Wholesalers will charge you $49 to $55 for a new game.
You've stated in the low 50s, I think, below at least, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've even said 49 because that's the cheapest we've ever gotten a wholesale game for. And
so that's a maximum of $11 profit before you take into account
shipping,
taxes on that you're paying as a business, and whatever overhead you have running the store.
Right.
That's not enough.
That's not enough. So what they talk about is now you have to with Amazon. People doing Amazon because with Prime you get these great discounts and things like that. Is it worth getting these games in? Are you actually going to get your shipment on time? If you get your shipment at 3 in the afternoon as opposed to the day before, so that you can have that game on your shelf on street date the morning of, are you even going to sell it? There's a talk about a guy in here who has an entire showcase of games on eBay.
Here's the quote. Ready? I have a whole showcase full of games we're selling online right now. Of games I probably paid $52 for, and I'm selling for $15 and
$12 to $15.
So he's taking a huge bath on these games that I guess he couldn't sell quickly enough, and the value, like you said, plummets on these new games.
If you walk into Luna, you will see single copies of games along the back wall, sealed, brand new, that we are taking baths on.
Sealed?
Sealed, yeah, sealed. That we probably paid $50 to $55 for, that we are now trying to sell new for $29, or whatever the current new price is, or $19.99, or even $9.99.
So from your perspective, then why would you continue to do that?
We don't.
You've given up on new games.
For the most part, we've given up on new games. And in this article, you will see a lot of these game stores that have. I saw something that was very interesting in this article, and that is there was a guy who will pre-order one copy of every new game off of Amazon through Prime. Get the discount.
Save 20%.
Save 20%, and that gives him a longer window of time to try to sell this game.
Sure. That makes sense.
That makes sense. And, that way he doesn't take such a hit if it doesn't sell.
And his profit margin will be the same. If he buys a $60 game at $48, you're saying that's the cheapest you can get it from a distributor anyway.
Anyways, so the profit margin's the same. What I think is probably the best idea, honestly,
would be able to return them if they didn't sell them to Amazon?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But what I think is an even better idea now, and I'm just freewheeling here in my head, is you buy the games that you or your employees might want. You put them on the shelf, and if they don't sell, then you've got a guaranteed sale somewhere anyway.
Well, that's a great point about. I think Best Buy does a percentage off club too on new releases. Amazon does theirs. I was talking about before, is that when you do that, then maybe you only buy 3 or 4. If you're forced from a wholesaler to buy 10 or 20, then that's a bigger risk versus just buying 3 or 4 that, hey, you make a little profit on. You can have it in your store. You say, oh, yeah, I have the new release here. You can buy it here if you want. And there's less, like you said, there's less risk involved at that point, too.
And the other problem is you've got you've got the stores that want to play it by the book, and then you get stores that break street date, which also makes it nearly impossible to sell these new games when you've got the stores that break street date. So you've got that issue.
Has digital affected?
Digital, I think, has, and I think digital has greatly affected things on the West Coast, especially. And the main reason digital is, and I did mention this in a previous podcast.
You can buy it earlier.
You can buy it earlier. I can buy, for instance, I get impatient. A game that I might really want physically. If I've got Tuesday off, and I'm sitting there Monday, and I really want Wipeout Omega Collection, and I know that I can stay up all night playing it, it's really tempting to buy it at 9 o'clock on Monday so I can stay up all night instead of waking up at 11 on Tuesday and going and buying it physically. So I think digital has affected it too. So there is that. The other thing that I found interesting besides, and I'm glad I saw that because I thought it was just us. I thought we just had shitty distributors. It's interesting to see that the distribution problems for independent game stores are the same everywhere.
Yeah, you're small potatoes compared to a big box store. Like, why would they care about it if you left tomorrow?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the thing was, I would love to know a lot of, there are some of these people who have been doing this a long time, but, some of these people are newer at this. I wonder if some of these people who've been doing this longer have seen the change that we've seen, because in 2006, we used to be able to get our games 2 days early. Mm-hmm. We used to be able to get them almost always at like the $45 to $49 price point, which was still not, I would say more, 45 is a little low, I would say, but we used to always be able to get them like at the 48 to 49 price point. And we used to always be able to get them a day early, so we would have them, or 2 days early, so we would always have them for street date. And that slowly became never the case.
Jeez.
And now we can't find a distributor who can maybe even get them to us on street date if on time.
Sounds like you got to order early on Amazon Prime and have
Right.
it shipped to you that day.
Other things that I found interesting. The costs are basic. Like when that guy who you said something about his face.
Is this something about someone's face?
That John Sakura, I think his name is John Sakura guy, who opened that cool store somewhere. The guy who, here he is, Jonathan Sakura, owner of Gamers Anonymous in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The guy who found all those,
Oh, the guy who found all I met him.
Yeah,
Right.
I know you did.
Yeah.
It's
I found all the night traps.
bridge.
Oh, yeah. No, I said he looked like a scumbag seller of the week that was selling all the interview tickets.
But
yeah, we laughed about
he found
that.
all the night traps. What was I gonna say? Shit, in regards to him, because he made an looking over like his because he
Payroll?
opened his books.
Okay.
And his books look very similar to Luna, so it's cool to see that these things
Costs
are
include, I'm just going to run it down quickly so people don't understand.
Yeah.
$3,400 for payroll, $1,800 for rent, almost $1,000 for
that
taxes.
rent seems low, but he's in New Mexico, not San Diego.
So $1,800 for rent, $250, $1,000 for taxes, $250 for miscellaneous bucket or minor expenses like cleaning supplies from Walmart, $200 for a point of sale system, which I'm trying to get Luna on, $175 for credit card processing, which is a decent amount. Remember, they take between 2 and 4%.
They kill, yeah.
$150 for electricity, $150 for insurance, $150 for internet and phone, $150 for an accountant.
Actually, okay, I'm gonna lie.
$100 for advertising.
He's got a really I'm sorry. His books are real low compared to
$100 for 5 stars customer rewards program. I guess I do something like that. $30 for gas, $6 for web hosting.
We actually pay a lot more, but still, I mean, it's cool to see this and be able to compare it.
So this is
California's
why.
just more expensive.
So this is why when people go, "Hey Pat, why do you care? Why don't you get on the brick and mortar stores for how much they charge?" Because they have a hell of a lot more overhead than some asshole on eBay or someone at a swap meet does.
Right, and
they have to protect themselves a lot more.
And this is in Jonathan here. This is not a small monthly amount that he's paying out. Okay, and he's in New Mexico,
This is $7,000 a month.
Where he's paying less probably because of location. Now you probably look at and I'm not going to get into our stuff, but we're paying more in rent, and I just because of the amount of trade-ins we do. Okay, so to stock shelves, he says he pays about $1,500 a month on new games and peripherals, and about $1,500 to buy used games. I would say the new games and peripherals, maybe a little bit more on peripheral. That's probably about right. We pay a lot more on the used games because we have a lot more coming in.
But what's interesting, he says on average they sell just under 1,000 of the store's 4,500 games each month. So
okay, so we're selling more than that.
So the whole point is that you always have to have more than what you're selling to keep, so people are interested in what product you have. But you also have to buy. It's not like you can turn stuff away anyway.
What I want to get into, really, the long and short of it is, I appreciate Jonathan putting this all out here.
We'll probably see him in Arizona.
That would be cool. Nice. And I'd love to talk shop with him. The numbers are different, but I think what I really appreciate him putting this out here for is that I want people to understand that this is why we have to charge what we do for games at a retail store. Mm-hmm. We're not out trying to fuck people over. We have overhead that people on Craigslist selling games don't have.
Or even people selling their collection at
a convention.
Yeah.
You know, that's why when I go to a convention, I can cut a really good deal on the games coming out of my personal collection, but we can't cut that kind of deal at Luna. This is why, yes, you know, people always get mad when I say, no, I'm not haggling at Luna. We can't afford to haggle at Luna. Now, if you come in and you're nice and you're buying stuff, yeah, nice. I will cut discounts, but, you know, you can't just ask for that stuff.
Sure, I still have $50 credit, by the way.
Yeah.
So, I haven't been in a new store yet. You haven't invited me to the new store.
I don't need to invite you to the new store.
Just as if, Pat, come visit me. So I miss you visiting you here, Ian.
So there is something that I have noticed, though. A lot of these places, so there is talk on this about them saying 5 to 10 years.
Of what?
Of physical store presence. They think left.
I think we've reached the peak, and we're going to see a decline. I wanted to get to this. You skipped over this. This is more of retro in general. Well, it's hard. You almost can't run as an independent game store without retro games.
This is where I was. I skipped over it for a reason. I wanted. And I'm getting back. I'm getting
paragraph I'm looking at right here.
I'm getting to it right now. Well, I think I am.
We're late.
Let me get to this, and if I'm missing something you're talking about, then jump in.
Go.
So they're talking about how they think there's a physical presence of these types of stores for maybe the lifespan is maybe 5 to 10 more years. I think that is probably true for stores that are focusing more on new games. This article seems to... Now, I know there are some stores in here that are dealing in retro, but I think that's not necessarily true if your main focus is on retro. I also think that because there are some stores in here that are talking about it where they talk about how they have to branch out to stay alive. I think that's
branch out with like trinkets and loot
trinkets and magic cards and toys. I think that's more for stores that are dealing in newer games. I think if you're dealing in retro,
that's what GameStop's doing.
If you're dealing in retro, I think that's very dangerous, actually.
But it's also dangerous to stick entirely with retro games if we've reached a peak of not just the interest in retro game, but also the pricing.
True, which is why someplace like Luna covers everything, but you have to have a healthy selection.
Oh, sure.
Of everything.
It's also how many stores are in your area.
You can't, right. You can't have... You can't focus mostly on new games and have a paltry selection of retro.
Yeah, that's my point.
You can't focus entirely on retro but skip out on PS2, 360, PS3, PS4, and Xbox One.
Sure. This is a semi-advertisement for my conversation with John Hancock, Super Collector John Hancock, on Not So Common Podcast, but we spoke about the state of retro game collecting for a chunk of that, including where we are with retro gaming stores. And he in his own estimate, said in 5 to 10 years, independent of this article, a lot of these retro game stores are going to be gone. And I do not disagree. We've gotten a huge influx of them in the past, probably 5-6 years. And in terms of prices, we have reached a peak. And at least for NES. I'm not sure about other ones, but I looked them up on the spot talking to him. We've reached sort of the peak, I think, in terms of what you can get on a lot of these common or even slightly uncommon games. We looked up a game like Contra, where in the peak was $48 on price charting summer of last year. Now it's a $30 game, $28 game.
I think you're we to pull back the curtain again. We talked about this a little bit. I think you're right on NES. I don't think you're right on other systems.
But we're going to get to the end of what's a retro game. We are not going to have people going out and buying PS3 games in 20 years to know what they're doing with NES, Super Nintendo. You're not going to see that happening for a variety of reasons I won't get into.
I think you're speculating too much on that.
Okay, I'll make that bet that you're not going to have a bunch of PS3 collectors. The same way you're not seeing a huge amount of PS2 collectors right now, and you're not going to see many people going out and trying to get a full PS1 set. You're just not going to see it. It's going to be subsets, I think, for collecting each system, but you're not going to have the general interest as it is for the cartridge-based system in general.
When I started at Luna, I never thought I'd see people scrambling for GameCube games.
Sure. Are they getting every single one? How many are doing that? When is that going to dissipate?
But
this is the
you
point.
don't need every single. But that's the thing. Lots of people are leaving behind full set collecting. I'm still generating money hand over fist on GameCube games.
Here's the point. You're in an area. You're the king of retro games in Southern California. What if you are in your digital press in Clifton, New Jersey,
and they've got right.
This is what I thought you were talking about. Over the past three years. He's seen 5 retro game stores open within 30 minutes of him.
Here's the good news for Digital Press, and here's the bad news for the other guys.
Yes.
Digital Press opened a long time ago.
Yes.
Digital Press has the rotating stock.
Yes.
Digital Press has the reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Luna Video Games, we opened when it was cheap, when it was financially viable to do it. Digital Press is well into turning a profit. Luna's well into turning a profit.
Which is why you got overly defensive when I talked about all these game stores that may not be around, because you're in a lucky spot. There's a lot of locations now where there are multiple retro game stores that are competing against each other, and there's there's not only not going to be enough stock in the future to
Sure.
run those stores, not enough profit to go around, but not enough interest in general in retro gaming.
Don't take it as defensive. This is passionate. It just there's a huge difference, and we've talked about this on the podcast before too. People who are opening retro game stores now,
Uphill battle to begin with.
it's a huge uphill battle. By the time they could conceivably start turning a profit, they're
You always said if you have to start right now, you need a huge fucking collection. You need
and you need a huge amount of money
you need
to burn.
money to burn to keep flow until you start rotating. But also, you gotta be like a huge fucking collector. Like if I wanted to get into it, I'd have a shop because I have a huge amount of inventory I can at least start with, and then hopefully have people come in gradually.
And you need 5 years of patience to make a profit.
You think so at this point? Like,
Yes.
Even if you're in a not semi-competitive area, you need a bunch of time.
If you're in a non-competitive area, at least 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess that's my thing. I don't think a place like Digital Press has to worry because they'll stick around, and I don't wish ill will on the game stores that open around them.
Oh, no,
but
no.
those places are going to close.
Yes, that's the
Digital
point.
Press will stay
And
open.
that's when I say the majority will close. The majority will close because the majority
Okay.
opened in the past 5 years.
Right.
The vast majority.
I get that. To open a retro game store now, you need a time machine.
Yes. Because again, for the reasons we all spoke about there. So this is a great article. Check it out on Polygon. Who wrote this?
It's once again, that was Matt Leone.
Leone.
And it's a kudos to you, dude. This is a fantastic article.
A lot of research
As a
here.
matter of fact, I need to tell him it's a fantastic article.
He's at
before I forget.
Lat Meones. It's opposite. Talk about hidden costs, the store breakdown costs we talked about from good old Jonathan Sakura, who I'll probably see at Game On Expo, and there's a lot going on now with interest in physical media, whether it's going to die out, whether collecting is going to die out. But yeah, listen to that Not So Common podcast with me and John Hancock, because we actually talk about some of these issues with that there.